Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for tuning in for an interview with a friend of mine and one of my favorite guitar makers, Jordon McConnell. I know I say that about every guitar maker is my favorite guitar maker, but this time I really mean it. So, um, anyway, I've known Jordan for I'm not sure how long, but many years, and I was always really taken with his guitars and especially some of the visual touches that he puts on them, which we'll get into today. And so, Jordan, welcome for coming on, and also congratulations on your recent acceptance into the as a Looth group member.
Yes.
We were kind enough to
The
cash your
hollowed
check.
halls.
So, yeah, as another way of saying it.
Well, we'll see how today goes. Maybe you guys will kick me out after this.
Oh, good point. Um, Oh, the other thing is that if anybody has any questions during the interview, just uh, raise your hand or put it in the chat or just unmute. So no reason to wait to the end. So Jordan, let's start a little bit with your background. Before you were a guitar maker, you were uh, and you were on time once for your preschool in 1983. You were a touring professional musician for a while. And at what point did you start to work on guitars in addition to just playing them?
Well, I actually had started building guitars before I was a professional musician. I had been playing. I was playing music when I was a little kid. I guess I was about 4 or 5 when mom and dad started me on guitar lessons, and I hated it. Actually, I didn't like it at all. I was more into skateboarding and playing soccer, and practicing guitar was just this annoying thing that I had to do. I don't know if I
Did
told
you
you this.
did you have
Huh?
a sort of a taskmaster of a teacher?
No, my teacher was really nice actually, but my parents, I don't know, it was interesting. They had a sense. Mom played piano, and dad's always been musical, but never like focused on one thing. But they had this idea that they wanted me and Steven to play instruments. And now this is a conversation I have with some of my friends that have kids that are around the same age that are they want to get their kids into music. And the question is always like, should we force them to do it if they don't want to do it, or should we let them kind of do their thing? And I think there's probably benefits to both ways, but for me, I was forced to do it. And even though I hated it at the time, fast forward, uh, well, I guess about 10 years, and I was pumped to be doing it. And so I would have quit any number of times if I had the option. And actually, my dehumidifier just turned on. Is that gonna, can you hear that at all? Is that
I can hear you fine.
Yeah,
okay?
Zoom has excellent noise reduction, so just don't. We'll let you know if anything bad happens with the sound.
Great. Well, we're already 3 minutes in, and I'm on a tangent here, so this is going well. Um, all I was gonna say is that I can, when I was, I guess I was about 6 maybe, and I'd finally been given maybe 6 or 7, and I'd been given the option to go back and continue guitar lessons the next year. And up until that point, I'd been kind of forced to do it. But I remember I was laying on the living room floor at my parents' place playing Super Mario, or no, it was probably, yeah, Super Mario. Um, and mom was on the phone with my guitar teacher saying, Jordan's not going to come back next year. He doesn't like it. Uh, sorry, thanks. You were great. And she was about to hang up the phone. And I have no idea what caused me to do this, but I like paused the game. I turned and I said, I'll do it one more year. And then unpaused the game and kept playing. Total like whim, not a sense of what changed in my mind in that moment, but I could pinpoint the entire rest of my life hinging on that one moment when I was 6 or 7 playing Super Mario. So that's oh, there's a raccoon in my yard. That was the tangential answer to your question of that you didn't ask at all about my background as a musician. Started playing music when I was a little kid. Started playing professionally when I was about 20, maybe. One on my first tour at about age 20, but I built my first guitar at the age of 18. So I'm distracted by like 4 different things that are happening, but we're settling in now. Yeah, I built my first guitar with David Freeman in Saskatchewan at the Timeless Instruments course in '99. So I was 18. I just got out of high school and decided to have a crack at guitar making, mostly just for a fun thing to do. And hopefully, I was playing a lot of acoustic guitar at the time and hoping to get the age old story, hoping to get a better guitar than I could afford or was easily available in Winnipeg at the time. So did that and then totally fell in love with it and came back from Saskatchewan, set up a workshop and built there for a couple of years before the band that I was playing with kind of made our first record and almost instantly had a record deal. And then we were on tour.
And
I don't even remember what your question was anymore.
Oh, no, well, that makes 2 of us. So. But so you were with the band, the Duhks, which was definitely quite successful. And am I correct? Didn't you win a Canadian Grammy or something along those lines?
We won, yeah, the Canadian Grammy. It's called a Juno, Michael. I think we got nominated for like 5 Junos. We won one of them. And technically, I don't claim this, but technically we won a Grammy as well for a contribution to a compilation record that we put out through our record label, Sugar Hill. But we got legitimately nominated for a Grammy the year the Dixie Chicks took everything. So I have the honor of saying that I lost to the Dixie Chicks at the Grammys. I will forever be a nominee.
All right. So with the your work with the Duhks, were you doing songwriting as well as playing, or were you just more of a guitarist in the band?
Well, the Duhks, it was an interesting band because we didn't do much in the way of original music. We did mostly traditional stuff or contemporary covers of contemporary songs, sort of done in the style of that our band was kind of pursuing. So, we did a lot of old trad Irish songs. We've got a big French Canadian influence in the band, Quebecois music and Franco-Manitoban stuff, a bunch of old time songs. And so we would do stuff like that and kind of reinterpret them. But then, we played some songs from friends of ours that were singer-songwriters. None of us were really like accomplished singer-songwriters. So we always felt like there was a pool of stuff to draw from, that the songs were better than the songs we were writing, really was what it came down to. So we mostly just did that kind of thing. But our main focus would have been trad music.
Okay. And at some point you made a decision to stop touring and focus more on guitar building. When was that? And do you ever miss touring and playing at that level?
Yeah, I've been off the road long enough now that I'm starting to miss it a little bit. But I toured for a good 10. I was around 30, so started touring about the age of 20 and made it about 10 years before it seemed like it was probably time to at least step back from it for a while. Touring, there are ways you can do it. I think that are obviously there are ways that you can do it that are sustainable over the long term, but we never figured that out. So around the age of 28, 29, I started to kind of hit a bit of a wall and being out on the road. We were doing like sometimes 250 dates a year. A couple of years we did more than that. But we would be out for 10, 11 months of the year sometimes. And it's a lot of fun, but it's also takes a toll. So around the age of 30, I kind of started to see, I'm not going to be able to do this forever. And I was building guitars throughout that whole time frame. But, if I had finished a couple a year, that was great. So I was missing that and kind of wanted to go back and focus on that anyway. And so, yeah, I think about, I might have, I might have been 35 by the time I was fully extracted from kind of the world of playing music professionally. And um, never, I mean, I still play gigs sometimes with that band. Even we kind of drag it out of the mud and do a reunion show every once in a while. But most of my music now is focused on just kind of local stuff for fun. I play a lot of traditional Irish music, which was kind of my main thing. Um, but yeah, now the main focus has been, I've been back building full time for about 10 years and kind of retransitioning back into building for about 15.
All right. And were you playing your own guitars on the road?
I played, yes, not always though. I played, um, the first guitar that I took on tour was the first guitar that I made. I have it here. You can see it right there. It's that guitar. That's the first one that I built. So that was the one I built with David in Saskatchewan. So I played that for a long time until it got vaporized the third time, I think, by Air Canada, and I decided to retire it. So I built myself a dreadnought at that point, and I had a dreadnought and an old Larrivee that I was touring with, and the Larrivee had the headstock broken off, and then the dreadnought started to get a bunch of cracks on it. So I took that one off the road, and then in 2004 or five, my dad had a heart attack and retired from the job that he was doing. So I put him to work in the shop, and he built 3 guitars at that point. And I kept the first one, and he gave the other 2 to friends of his. And then that guitar has been my main guitar ever since. Although it has been destroyed a couple of times and rebuilt, and I'm pretty sure the X brace is not attached from about the bridge to the lower bout on the treble side right now, but which is the way things go.
Yeah, well, it's overrated X brace attachments. So, and so with all those years of playing, and it sounds like guitars, getting vaporized and cracked and all sorts of things, has that influenced how you make your guitars now? Sort of, lessons from playing, a guitar out traveling around and playing for 200 plus nights a year?
Good question. Yes and no. It makes me think really hard about who I'm building the guitar for a lot of the time. There's a lot of modern guitars that I would pick up, and they're amazing guitars. But if I were to take it on the road or even try to play a show with it, I'd probably punch a hole through the top before the night was over. But if I were to sit down with that guitar, and this is the same for my guitars too, if I were to sit down and play that guitar in a calm, reasonable kind of setting, that's the right guitar for that. So right now, for example, I've got a guitar that's heading out pretty soon that is built for a touring musician. So it was built specifically for that person's lifestyle. Really, like I know that guitar is likely going to end up under a table at a jam session at 2 a.m, and a beer is probably going to get spilt on it. So French polish didn't seem like the right finish for that guitar. But I mean, besides that, I guess a guitar, I just try to build the appropriate guitar for the appropriate person. Is kind of what it comes down to. And I might build it a little heavier, try to build it a little bit more robust if I know it's going to be put through the ringers. But also, I feel, I could have taken better care of my guitars on the road, and they would have survived a bit better. But it's part of the deal with a touring guitar. It's gonna take knocks, and it's gonna need to be repaired, and it might not make it 100 years. It's just kind of how it goes, I think.
Yeah. Let's see. So Jordan, I wanted to share a screen. take a look at some of the guitars on your website. Can everybody see this rosette on the screen?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I'm assuming that it's not just Jordan and I who can see it, but
We got it, Michael.
okay, cool. Thank you. So this is a example of I don't want to say it's typical of your designs, but I'd certainly recognize it as one of yours. And I know that, or I think that you don't really use any, digital tools or CAD or CNC. And so, my question for you is, some of these pieces in here like have straight line sort of facets. Even this piece down here, and are all these just various chisel cuts, or can you kind of run through, your basic thinking and steps of, without going into excruciating detail of some of the highlights of this rosette?
Yeah, definitely. I could probably even, well, I'll show you how I do it. And if I'm
Sure,
running
why
on
not?
too long, you just let me know.
Okay.
There is. Let me find the drawing. I wonder if, can you guys still see my phone camera?
We can add it for sure.
Yeah, can you spotlight that one? Oh, there we go. It's up, Jordan.
Okay, I can't. Oh, there we go. What am I doing here? Okay, sorry. Now I'm confused about which image I'm seeing on which thing. Because I can't see. I can't see what I'm. Sorry, Michael. All I'm seeing is the image of that rosette on my computer now, so I can't see what I can't see what you guys are seeing.
Yeah, why don't you stop the share, Michael?
All right.
Here we go.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. So, you guys see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a roadmap for making a rosette. I'm just thinking that's probably not. What's the best way to do this? This one might be easier. You'll be able to see it a bit clearer. It's not a rosette, but it'll give you the same basic idea.
Mhm.
So this is a head plate that I made recently, and it's the same. The principle here is the same for rosettes or for fretboard, however you want to do it. But basically, the image, I draw the image out full size on a piece of paper, either this size or bigger, depending on the size of the project. And then all I do is I go in with a ruler and I extend these lines outwards. And I mark them all. So for this section, I would make this first, and I would mark it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. And I create sort of a roadmap to layer these pieces of wood in. And all I do, this is the main. Once this is done, the job is done. Basically, then it's just a matter of how accurately I can put the pieces together. And once I start doing that, these are indicating grain lines, which are, it's helpful to keep everything kind of organized. But basically, I take my first piece of wood, which is going to be this section right here, drop it on this piece of paper, and I've got a long 18-inch like flexible steel start ruler that I then lay on the image along this line. So I've got my piece, then I make sure it overlaps these lines, draw my piece on, lay my ruler over it, draw this line. So step one, then I go to the bandsaw, cut it close, And at that point, depending on what kind of wood I'm working with or what the orientation is or any number of factors, I'll either take my chisel and get right on that line and just go straight down through, or sometimes I'll end up using the disc sander, and I'll sand right up to that line, or a hand plane. For longer pieces like this, I always end up using a hand plane to get it nice and straight. But the whole thing here is just how accurately I can be following these lines. And so once I've got this piece, this might be a little bit confusing, but it'll be overlapped. It'll be bigger than this line. So it'll be extended out to about here. But this line is cut as accurately as possible. And then I take a second piece, which is going to be this piece here, get this line straight on this piece, and then I lay it down on my bench. I've got a granite slab that I use as a flat surface with some wax paper on top of it. I take my two pieces that have a nice straight edge, and I'll cut long strips off of a veneer. So on that image that Michael shared, there's those white lines are all veneer lines that are glued between each individual piece. So I'll take a big long strip of that and I'll break off a little section that fits between the two pieces that I'm working on. I butt them up, and as long as I don't need to bend this piece at all, I just use super glue. So I butt them up against each other, and then I run water thin super glue down in to glue that joint. Level the top surface with a chisel. So now I've got two pieces with a veneer glued between them, and that forms this one line right here. Now my piece is bigger than these. It overlaps these lines because these are my next lines that I'm going to cut, and lay my ruler down using my road map, draw this line on, go to the bandsaw, do the whole process again. So now I've got this piece, this line is glued in. I've got this line cut now. I take this piece that's oversized and I glue it on here. And then I go in and I cut this line, glue this piece on, cut this line, glue this piece on, and just build it up like that. And the rosettes are no different. It's just a little bit more complicated because you're kind of following a curve. And sometimes you need to plan carefully what cuts you're making where, because you'll run into a problem where you can't, for whatever reason, the shape of the piece might prevent you from making a cut. So you have to be a little bit careful and sort of think through everything from beginning to end before you get going. But that's the basic process. It's just pieces that are glued flat together with a veneer in between them. And then the next line gets cut, glue that veneer with the piece, and keep going like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I would point out, at least from my perspective, that on the headstock, because it's an asymmetrical design, there's a certain amount of, I don't know, kind of like leeway in terms of just how precise you have to be. But for that rosette that we showed earlier, which is completely symmetrical on both sides, you have to make one side a mirror image of the other. So your level of precision seemingly would have to be, almost flawless to get that perfect symmetry that you achieved on there.
Well, you can cheat a little bit sometimes, depending. Like the whole reason I started doing this was because it just evolved out of making solid wood rosettes, like just classic one piece. And I would take a big chunk of wood and cut a circle out of it. And at some point, I didn't have big chunks of wood around anymore, so I had to think like, oh, maybe I'll just glue this piece on, and I would just do a butt joint. And then at some point, I started doing, I didn't have two pieces that would form a piece big enough, so I had to fit a little third piece in. So it just grew out of trying to find interesting ways to use the material that I had available. And a lot of the earlier designs would be dictated by pieces of wood that I would find on the floor of the shop. I'd go around looking for scraps of wood, offcuts of stuff, and think, oh, this is kind of an interesting looking piece. And I would just lay it down on a piece of paper that I had a circle drawn on and start building the rosette up around that. And then it just sort of over time evolved into, have a few different patterns that I kind of are my go-tos that I'll use to fill in different areas depending on the look that I'm going for or the material that I have available. So what I was going to say is for the symmetrical stuff, it is possible if you've got thick enough material to use that same process and make one half and then just resaw it and flip it over, and you can mirror image stuff that way. I have done that a few times with success, but sometimes it can actually be easier to just do it, because one of the things that's nice about this whole thing is that I am trying to follow these as accurately as I possibly can. But you can sort of adjust in the moment. If something doesn't quite go right, you can sort of fudge this side a little bit to bring the image back in. Because with the rosettes, the tricky thing is making sure, you've got a finite area here that is going to be the image. And so once you cut that out, if it's not where you want it to be, there's nothing you can do about it really. So it is nice to be able to kind of tuck things back in, but I also do find that anytime if things start to get off the roadmap a little bit, and I kind of follow that, sometimes it works out and I end up with something that can be cooler than what I drew originally, but usually I just end up getting in trouble. So it does come down to, that's the image that you want, and that puts everything where you want it. And so following that is kind of the ticket to success for that thing.
Yeah. All right.
I don't know. Did that explain? Was that useful, or does anybody have any questions about that? Sort of hard to get the idea across, maybe. But
anybody have any questions?
I do actually.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Ken. Nice to meet you, Jordan.
How's it going?
Love your stuff. Good to meet you, and nice to see you as well, Mike.
Thank you.
So I'm just a little unclear as to the actual mechanics of how you use the roadmap and the wood and the ruler and transferring the lines. So I'm just wondering if you could just tweak that explanation just a little bit.
Yeah, totally.
Thank you.
Let me see if we can use this fancy. Okay, hang on. I thought about cleaning up my shop before we did this to make it seem like I was one of those people that have a clean shop, but I didn't. So, okay, can you guys see that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So here's my cool, fancy, bendable steel ruler. We'll use this chunk. So there we go. So this is the first piece that I would start with. And based on how my roadmap works, I know this maybe will make sense or maybe not. But based on how this image lays out, I know that I need to work in this direction, because I can't make this cut and then I don't want to butt something up. I don't want to make this cut and then have to butt something up here and get this joint perfect at an angle that I'm going to have to work on. So the way this works, once I've got this piece, I'm just working in straight line to straight line joints. And I don't need to worry about mitering or angles or anything like that. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But basically, I know this piece needs to fill this area here. So as long as it's bigger than those two lines, it's going to work. So first cut, I just lay that piece on the drawing and then line up my ruler, look for number one. It's right here, this cut. So I can just bend the ruler down until it sits flat on the image on either side, and making sure that this doesn't move. Got my line reference down here and my line reference over here. So I just hold this in place now. And of course I don't have a pencil. nearby, but sometimes a scalpel is more useful for this anyway. Just mark that line. And now I've got my cut line marked here. So now I'm just getting rid of this part. And like I say, you can do that with a chisel, a hand plane, a disc sander, belt sander, but you want it to be as straight as possible because this glue joint needs to be reasonable. So once that line is there, I can cut that piece off, and then I'll go back and I'll put it on the image and I'll line this line up with that line. And I just eyeball that, leaving a little bit of space for the veneer that's going to go in there. So I just get that back on the image with that line lined up. And there's my second piece. It goes on now. That same line gets marked, cut, and then these just get glued together like this, making sure that I know this piece needs to fill this whole area. So here's my first piece here. The line is cut here. This piece gets glued on. Then once these two are together, the ruler goes back on and the third line gets marked. And you just keep moving like that. And the only other thing that is worth saying, I suppose, is that once I've got the first 2 or 3 glued up here, what I'll do is I'll take a pencil and I'll actually trace around. I'll trace around these pieces, so I have a reference to make sure that this always goes back down in the same spot. And once things sort of get built up, and I wonder, did I mark? Yeah, so I've got these tracing lines here and here, where the areas outside the pattern become my reference for lining things back up. Because once you get sort of up into this area, you've got a lot of lines that kind of need to go back in the same place so you can keep marking. So the more reference points you have to get the piece back exactly where you want it, the better. You'll be able to see, because each of these are veneer lines, you can see and line them up with your different reference points, but it does get to be a little tedious the more complicated they get. But that's the basic process. I could show you on the rosette, but it's really the same thing. You know, it's just once the roadmap is made, it's really just following it as closely as you can. Was that helpful?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, very much. So I see that a key aspect of this roadmap is sort of the extension of those lines beyond the design itself, just to help you orient the ruler, correct?
Yeah, really, that's the critical thing. Yeah. Getting that laid out as accurately as possible. And then it's always the furthest extended points that become the reference. That sort of allows the least amount of error within the image itself. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The layout is the thing. And that's why I said, like, once you've got that image done, then the majority of your work is done, besides just the tedious aspect of putting it together at that point.
Great. Thanks very much, Jordan. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Judson.
So on that kind of herringbone, maybe you call it pattern, it looks like the pieces are getting smaller.
Yeah.
Are you laying that out by eye, or do you like to say, like, oh, is it like, yeah, that looks good, that's it? Or do you ever like to follow, like, okay, I think it looks good if I make each piece, I don't know, 2 millimeters smaller, and then you kind of go, I'm going to go by that rule, and it's kind of, and I'm sure each one is different of kind of what you're going for, but yeah, I'm kind of curious about that as well, of maybe the actual design part of what your head's at with that, if that makes sense.
No, that's a really good question. I that's something I think about a lot, actually. And I do 9 times out of 10, I'm eyeballing it. And I can sort of,
Hell yeah.
yeah, I say that, but I do have little tricks. Like on this one, can you still see the piece of paper sitting there?
Yes.
You guys can still see this?
Yeah.
Okay. It's funny that you asked that, because this is one that I did very recently. And it did, this section sort of tripped me up for a while, because I'd been messing around. I don't know if you can see how many layers there are that have been erased here, but I spent an ungodly amount of time on this, almost as an exercise, because I wanted to see how much like movement I could create in this area just by compressing. As Judson pointed out, these all get smaller as they move towards a smaller point. And so I had eyeballed it a few times, and I started to get close to something that I thought was interesting, but I couldn't quite get the dimensions right. And then I noticed, stop me if this is too far out there, Michael, but I noticed that there's 2 points where this sort of herringbone, we could call it, intersects. So if we get sort of into this area, let's bring this a bit closer. Of course, never a pencil and never an eraser when you need it.
That's so true.
Man. Maybe I should have cleaned up the shop before we did this. All right. Well, we're going to make do with what we've got here. There's 2 points of intersection along the way here, where where each piece sort of creates the focal point. So, yeah, Tony's like, screw this, I'm out of here. On this one, what I did, how can I say this? When I'm creating these images, I do want a certain amount of flow and a certain amount of like aspect ratio to be observed. And so guidelines sometimes do become useful. And I don't need to talk about this for an hour, but basically in this section, you've got two focal points, basically. You've got, well, 3 reference points, I suppose. You've got this point, and this point, and this point. And it's creating sort of a triangular image. And I could have just done an even pattern of things through this whole area, and it would have looked fine. But because the image naturally comes to a point here, it creates a sort of aspect ratio, or like a perspective movement in this direction. So at some point, as I was eyeballing it, I started to realize that compressing this stuff as it went here was a little more interesting looking. But I couldn't get it even just by eyeballing it. So when I noticed there were these intersection points, all I did was draw a line here and another line here. And this took me about 4 tries to get this balance right, but because it wasn't entirely intuitive. But anyway, once I had these 2 reference lines, I put all of these intersection points along that reference line, and it naturally kind of created this this compression into this focal point. So that's the answer to Judson's question. I've got, well, I won't bother getting it, but sometimes I'll do a fingerboard. And one thing that I've been exploring a lot is sort of, I'll always try to connect it to the rosette. So I've been exploring sort of S-curve ideas and ways to incorporate the technique that I'm just showing you guys into movement like this. So trying to find something organic that has a natural movement to it, but is built up with all these straight line facets. So what I'll often do if I'm designing a fingerboard or a rosette is I'll draw lines like this that sort of become the movement that I want to see. And then for facet lines, I can kind of start going in and doing stuff like this. And now I've got this movement started, and it's all these straight lines that I can use with I can do with my hand plane or my chisel or my disc sander, whatever is the appropriate thing. So sort of lining up, getting the general movement, and then just sort of adding in these lines until that movement seems natural and balanced is step one. And then it's really just eyeball, go in and shift things around subtly until everything seems to be laying where I want it. And then the long hard work begins of marking, cutting, gluing, marking, cutting, gluing until you've got it.
Super cool.
All right. Let's see.
We are in deep nerd territory if that was super cool.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if I could show this this guitar where are you guys seeing my screen share?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So here's an example where you've taken these lines and taken them up onto the fingerboard. There's another guitar you had recently, which I may not be able to find. But I'd certainly encourage all of you to check out Jordon's website. He's got a pretty extensive gallery.
That one has a pretty major,
Yeah, this
cool.
is the one I was thinking of. So here you can see this just really incredible design, starting with these sort of facet cuts all the way up at the top of the headstock, down through the entire fingerboard, and then curving around into the rosette. And at least to my eye, the fan fret bridge also really folds nicely into that design. So very, very cool. This is a nice little touch here as well, continuing of the sapwood.
That was lucky.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it luck, but anyway, nice work with it. So, Jordon, I do want to get on to a shop tour before we start running out of time. So,
holy cow!
Do you want to? I'll stop the share, and maybe you can give us the kind of a tour of your shop. And I definitely want you to hit or talk about the guitar cradle that you have, which is a really cool jig. Yeah. So
do you think I should try the phone or the computer for this? I'll use the phone and then I can set it up on that.
Okay. Yeah. If it doesn't work, we'll switch back to the laptop.
Well, here, I'll do the laptop 360 tour, and then I'll pick up the phone. If anybody starts getting seasick, just let me know and I'll try something different here. But so I live in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, where the temperature drops to -40 in the winter, and Murray would know about this too. It gets dry as a bone. So I built this shop. I built from the ground up 6 years ago, I guess now. So put in floor heat and big thick walls. But one of the important things is sort of an in and out zone. So that sort of becomes that's like the airlock to come in and out. So in the winter, I don't lose all the air inside. But I was lucky when I built this place, put nice big windows, all south facing. So this bench that is currently just a horizontal surface to dump stuff gets amazing natural light all day long. And there are lots of days when I come in here that I don't even turn the lights on. But so this is got some chisel storage and file storage there. And then just sort of a platform to dump the planes. Got some knives there. 6 years ago, and I'm still getting the shop organized, but I was going to make a nice rack for knives there, and I haven't got around to it. Some more chisel storage there. Clamps. Some rack stuff. That's basic wood storage area. Um, and then this would be sort of the main work area. Let's see what you guys can see. Got the main bench here, and then I've got a pedestal vise here. So I've got a nice big area for 360 around that pedestal vise. And then this is the machine room. So pretty basic stuff. Some more storage in the corner, and then the dust collection. It's all piped into each station, so it's nice. Just open a gate, and away you go. An unfinished template storage wall, but that's the whole thing.
Yeah, Jordan, can we see the guitar cradle?
Yeah. So this was my take on the Troji. My dad is he's an engineer, so he loves stuff like this. We spent a good amount of time kind of dialing in different aspects of it, and he did it all up on AutoCAD at one point, and then we just made it out of Baltic birch. But it's essentially got I can't remember what they call this, an Acme thread, maybe. It's like a coarse.
Yeah, Acme thread.
Acme thread, yeah. It's a coarse, really coarse thread. Really coarse threaded rod, big. It's about an inch, maybe an inch and a quarter in diameter, and then some linear bearings here. This is just a leather piece put in so that all the dust doesn't fall directly into the threads. I'd made this. The first version of this had a really fine thread here, so you could get a really nice, slow and accurate adjustment for clamping the body, but it would get jammed full of dust, and then the threads started to eventually eat each other. So this big Acme thread I've had for a bunch of years now, and it works better, and it's faster to adjust. Anyway, so it's a better option. But this is just a bearing wheel with the handle. But the linear bearings keep everything. They go through on either side of this post. They keep the whole thing from wanting to rack. But the cool thing about this is we designed it so these two surfaces both have a 15-foot radius on them, and this end moves. There's about, I don't know, maybe 2.5 inches of play here, but it's also hinged this way and sprung so it'll stay straight, but it can flex in either direction like this. So it'll self-conform to whatever orientation you put the body in. This will sort of adjust and hold it really, really securely. So yeah, use it for everything. And
Are those jaws? Do you have any padding on those?
yeah, there's just 1/8 inch cork. It's that rubberized automotive stuff. So this wouldn't be great for if a body had a finish on it. Probably it's a little, it's not. It's probably going to be scratchy, but I don't put a finished body in here. But when I'm working on them for scraping sides and sanding, working on butt strips and adjusting neck stuff, this tool I'm using pretty much constantly. But you could make a version of this that had a softer pad that would then allow you to put a finished body in there without worrying too much about scratching stuff.
And is that whole unit bolted to the floor, or can you move it around?
I didn't want to bolt it to the floor because I wasn't quite sure. Well, 2 reasons. There's in-floor heat in this floor, so I don't want to be drilling big holes into the concrete. So what I did was I just mounted it. I bolted it to this is a 4x4 sheet of 1-inch MDF. So I bolted it to that, drilled holes and bolted up through. And so while I'm working, I'm standing on the MDF and stabilizing everything. But it's rock solid with that base. I did the same thing with my pedestal vise. Mounted it on a big square of MDF so that I can move it around if I want to. It's not easy to move around, but it is movable. And that big sturdy base means it's solid. They're not moving around.
Well, that's I really like that vise. It's one of the nicer ones I've seen, and at least in my experience, just being able to hold the guitar in a certain position is half the battle. So.
Yeah, it was a game changer. I started working on that one when I used to have this crazy setup where I would use the end vise of my bench with those. It had like two big handles, and you could kind of adjust it a little bit. And I made these flexible plywood pieces that went in. And at one point, I was working on a guitar, and I had it clamped in this end vise setup, and I loosened one end and went to grab the guitar, and it slipped through, but it was still clamped in at this end. And so it slipped out of my hand here and did this big swing and just went across the shop and bam, popped the side right off. So I figured I got to get a better setup than what I'm doing. And it made a huge difference, especially for like scraping sides and sanding is really nice, but you can do that on the bench if you need to. But for working on end grafts and especially for like adjusting neck angle stuff, when I'm dialing in that fit for flossing the heels, having a really sturdy setup for that, where it's not. The nice thing about that, as opposed to I tried one of the foam troji things, which worked great, but I found that there was still a lot of movement in there because the foam tended to be really thick and soft. But that thing, you can clamp it right up nice and tight, and it's rock solid. So you don't get any movement when you're working on stuff.
And how much does that thing weigh, you think?
Oh, a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I would guess 80 pounds probably.
All right. And so the main posts are pieces of like 3/4 inch Baltic birch that you laminated up together to get. Okay. So yeah. Well, it's really nice. Really, that's a really great vise. And I guess there are good vices you can have. So, all right. Well, I'm gonna keep going in there. I know that you have also make good use of Japanese tools, and I don't know if I'd describe it as an extensive collection, but you've had some knives that you've had custom made for you. Can you show us one of those?
Yeah, for sure. When I took the course in Saskatchewan, one of the guys that was there was named Daisaku Kobayashi, and his woodworking skills. I was 18, he was maybe 21, something like that. And I won't get bogged down in that story. I worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken when I was a kid, and Kentucky Fried Chicken I hated the job. It was terrible, but it ended up being an instrumental part of my life, because Kentucky Fried Chicken was what got Daisaku from Komoro in Nagano, where he lived. When he wanted to go to university, he went to Kentucky because his favorite restaurant in Komoro was Kentucky Fried Chicken. And while he was in Kentucky at school, he found out about this guitar making course in Canada, and then he ended up there. We became very good friends, and now Japan has been a very big, important part of my life ever since, through Daisaku. So anyway, his woodworking skills were already insane when we were doing that.
No, I want to talk more about this Kentucky Fried Chicken thing. So, are the Kentucky Fried Chickens in Kentucky any different than Kentucky Fried Chickens anywhere else in the world?
Well, I'm not the person to ask that question to because seeing how that shit was made, I have not eaten at that place since I was a 15-year-old.
Totally understand.
Dropping that chicken day in and day out. Yeah, if you never want to eat, if you've got a Kentucky Fried Chicken problem and you want to get over it, just go back into the kitchen and tell them to ask them to show you how the gravy is made, and you will never eat a Kentucky Fried Chicken again. I can almost guarantee it.
All right. And did you impart any of this inside information to your friend?
Daisaku? No, I didn't want to ruin it for him. Like to this day, he loves Kentucky Fried Chicken. We went to the last time I was in Japan, we went to Kentucky Fried Chicken in Komoro, which is the locus point of Daisaku and I's experience together.
You just ordered the biscuits and played it safe?
I ate a piece of chicken, yeah. So I'm lying. I did eat there once since I was a 15-year-old, but I had a drumstick and it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, to be honest. But
all right. Enough of the Kentucky Fried Chicken. So this guy who you met at Timeless School, great woodworking skills from Japan.
Amazing woodworker, and he had all Japanese tools. That his uncle was a temple builder, so he's a carpenter working on restoring and rebuilding old temples, and so he got a lot of his uncle's tools and had these chisels with him, and amazing the hand planes. So I was using these they were great chisels. I don't remember what brand they were, but they were just like the cheap shit, the Marples or whatever that I could get at Lee Valley in town here. And I'm holding one of my chisels and I'm holding one of his chisels and going, I don't know, man, this is like a totally different world. So developed an appreciation for those tools pretty early on. And very shortly after that, was traveling through San Francisco and went to Japan Woodworker. You guys remember that store? That was amazing. And I got a set of Nishiki chisels there, 4 of them, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 3/4, and 1 inch. They were my main bench chisels for a long time. But yeah, I've always had a love for those tools. But you asked about the knives. So I got them shamefully a while back, and I haven't finished setting them up yet. But I custom ordered these through Nobori Hamonoten in Osaka, and I don't know. They're a great tool store. They do Japan. They're sort of two tracks for tools. They're the generally available carpentry tools you can get at any hardware store in Japan. But then there's this whole artisan approach to making tools. And one of the more well-known guys, his last name is Tazai. His family name is Tazai. And he's the guy, he makes like the really fancy wood grain chisels. So this is one of my prized possessions. But you guys have probably all seen this style of chisel. So that's made by Tazai. And one of the selling features, he does like their art pieces, but he also focuses on steel that's a little bit tougher for hardwoods. In Japan, typically the wood they're using is softwood. It's hinoki and it's different forms, which is a cypress, and it's cedars. And there is white oak that is used, but typically for almost all the buildings and most of the work in temples, it's this softwood. So the chisels can get insanely sharp, but they can be a little bit brittle because they're not required to cut through ebony or rosewoods. So Tazai has a proprietary style of steel that he uses that's a little bit tougher, and I find works really well for what we're doing. But so I ordered these knives from him. These are called Cutie Dashi. And you've probably seen this style of knife as well. But so I've got a left and a right for neck carving, which really, like, frankly, was a game changer for being able to get in on either side with whatever bevel, an up bevel or a down bevel for whatever cut was making it. Really gave me a lot more control over getting those curves really dialed in. Plus, they look really cool. But one nice feature about these these ones were made by Akio, who's the elder to Zion. I don't know that he's active anymore. And this was made by his son Michio. And so there's two different style of these of attaching the cutting. Oh man, to go deep nerd. And you guys probably all know this already. There's a softer steel at the top, and then a harder steel that's the cutting surface, and they're laminated together. So that's what gives you that sort of two-toned surface on the cutting edge. So the softer steel in the middle, and then the cutting edge, the harder steel for the cutting edge. So the way these are made, you can see there's a little dip right here that allows you to get the whole trick with Japanese tools is making sure the back stays flat all the time. So this allows you to get the whole backside of the knife on your stone, and you've got a like just this area that you're working. Whereas this kiridashi, which is the other style, it's basically just one flat surface the whole way. So you've got your ura, which is the hollow on the back, but with this one, it kind of was a little warpy from when it came out of the forging process, the tempering process. So I've been working on this one for years, trying to get it into a spot where it's easy to sharpen. But there's always this area where I'm struggling to keep this area flat without riding up on part of the backside of the knife. So anyway, this style is very easy to sharpen, and once you get this knife dialed in, it's really fast to sharpen, really easy to sharpen, and gets insanely sharp, and is really useful for net carving stuff.
And are you sharpening that the bevel in a jig, or are you just hand sharpening on a stone the bevel? And is there a micro bevel on it, or it's just one bevel?
Yeah, for the kiridashi, it's all done by hand. So that bevel is all just sharpened by hand. I don't use a jig for these, and I don't use a micro bevel either. But typically, and this is sacrilege, but on a lot of my Japanese chisels, I use the Lee Valley Mark II sharpening jig, because I've learned how to use it in a way that's quite repeatable. So I will typically put a micro bevel on my Japanese chisels, and I don't sharpen them. I don't sharpen the bevel by hand. Get the backside all flat and good to go, and then flip it over, put it in the jig, and really it allows me to sharpen in a way that it's like 5 passes on a 5,000 grit stone, and then 8,000, and I'm done. So it's just the way I do it, but there are good arguments to be made for learning.
But it
to
is
sharpen.
Sacrilege. Let's be clear about that.
It is sacrilege, yes.
Yeah. All right. So just a few more questions for you, Jordan, and then we'll open it up. So you also are one of the few guitar makers I know who primarily on their steel string guitars does French polishing. And have you felt like you've reached a point where you've kind of made it comparable to spray finishing in terms of the labor involved, and also the final outcome in terms of the look you want?
Yeah, I do actually. In terms of time invested, I find the difference between French polish and spraying nitro, which is what I did. There's a higher investment up front with French polish, and it's more involved throughout the whole process. But then the back end there's like almost no work to be done once you're flat and shiny. There's no wet sanding, there's no buffing. So it's a different process. Spraying, as we all know, get suited up, spray it on flat, spray it on flat. And then once that's done, it's just a waiting game until you can buff it. The thing that I hated was wet sanding for days. To be fair, I felt like I never quite got my technique really dialed in for the back end process of a nitro finish. But I felt like, man, I am spending hours wet sanding, and I hated it. And then buffing always felt really dangerous. I lost the guitar once to the buffing wheel, and so I was always really cautious after that. And it always felt like I am really taking a risk here by doing this. And it's probably not that way for everybody. I'm sure it's not that way for everybody, but for me, it always felt like, you're so intimate with the whole process until you get to the spraying, and then I'm like putting this giant suit on and like trying to get as far away from it as possible. It always felt anathema to the whole thing. And so I just always struggled with it. And then I started to get sensitized to the lacquer, because I wasn't always bundled up. I was pretty cavalier with it for the first 20 guitars that I sprayed, probably. But I decided to move away from nitro once that reaction started showing up. And the French polish process, it might be a little more labor intensive throughout the whole thing, but in terms of the time invested, like my spray booth wasn't in my shop, so I had to go. It was at my parents' place, so I would have to box up the guitars. I'd have to drive over there, and I would spend a day or 2 days or a week or whatever spraying guitars. So there's like a whole week dedicated to that, where I'm not in the shop doing other stuff. Whereas the French polish, once pour filling is a whole other story. But once I've got the pour fill to where I want it, I pick the guitar off the rack, and it's an hour a day. I spend an hour doing it usually at the end of the day. Glenn Nichols recommends an old fashioned in one hand and your rubber and muñeca, your fad in the other hand, and that's how you end your day. And it's really enjoyable once you kind of get it dialed in. And it's not the way I do it. I get a few coats on, and it's an hour a day at the end of the day for 4 or 5 days, and then it sits for a while, and then I go back to it. And I've got the process down to probably 6 or 7 sessions. So that amounts to about, if I had to guess, I would say I'm putting about 12 hours in on a French polish from beginning to end.
That's pretty good.
Which is probably more than you'd spend on an individual guitar spraying nitro and then buffing it out, but maybe not that much more. And because the process is spread out and it's only a little bit of time, it's just like here and there, you're just kind of picking away at it. It seems much more, I don't know. The stress levels are like so much lower, and it seems like a more casual, easygoing way to do it than getting the chemical can out.
Okay. Yes, I agree with all those things, and it's generally considered like, one of the Achilles heels of French polish has just been that it's it's an absolutely beautiful finish, but it's also really soft. Have you had any like issues over the years with guitars showing back up just scratched all hell, or how do you kind of deal with the softness of the finish, or do you just relay that to your customers and they know that this is what it is and they shouldn't expect it to be a resistant finish?
Well, yes and no. Yes to all of the above. It isn't a finish that I would use for everybody. The touring musician that I was talking about earlier that I'm building the guitar for, I had Michel Pellerin in Quebec do the finish on it. He's spraying I don't even know what it is, a catalyzed poly.
Yeah, it's a poly.
Yeah, and his finishing work is just insane. It's so thin and it's like perfect. So yeah, you can spill a beer on that. It'll be fine. You spill a beer on a French polish, it's gonna probably be a problem. That being said, I have with a reasonable amount of care, I've got guitars out there that have full French polish on them that are 10, 15 years old they look pretty good. Like not necessarily worse than nitro finished guitars that are the same age that are out there that I've made. So I think with a reasonable amount of care, and the caveat that some people do, like it seems to be a real thing that some people do have sweat that will just eat right through it. It's like they're sweating horse piss or something, and it just will dissolve that finish. That's a real thing. So if that, those two things aside, you can get a French polish pretty durable. And the nice thing about French polish as well is that it will harden up. A several-year-old French polish finish is pretty bulletproof, actually. It still will be more susceptible to like extreme humidity or something spilled on it. But yeah, I think it's a totally viable finish. And there are things you can add to it that will toughen it up and harden it and actually get it so that it's glossier at the end of the day. So, visually, I would say the French polish finish that I'm doing now is as, it's as glossy, it's as clear, it's as clean as I was ever getting on nitro. And it has a warmth to it that I find you just don't quite get with any of the synthetic finishes. So I don't know, all those things lined up for it being a better option for me in the long run.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'd like to open it up for questions for Jordon at this point, but there's a lot of things we didn't talk about. Just knowing Jordon, you also play Ilian pipes. But anyway, that'll be for another time. But please, if anybody, let's see, we got a question from Murray. Where do you source your wood from?
I can wherever I can get it these days. Yeah, I wouldn't have any particular insight into that. I've been lucky to come across a couple stashes of people that were retiring. But I mean, in Canada, it's really hard. There's not many. There aren't many options. There's exotic wood in Burlington. There's A&M wood. There's great sources for maple and spruce out west. Wood River, Bow River. I don't know, man.
What about veneers? What about veneers, Jordon? Do you have a place?
Veneer? I just got a bunch of black veneer from Exotic Wood in Burlington. They seem to have a pretty good supply of different things. There's a place in the States called, I think it's just veneersupplies.com that I bought a bunch of stuff from recently, but he's really cautious about sending stuff across the border. So there are certain things he wouldn't send, even though I argued up and down that they weren't CITES restricted, but he just wouldn't do it. But you can always get stuff shipped to where, you're near Brown. You can get it shipped to Pembina and go pick it up if you're
we have a
still willing to. Yeah, there you go. So it's possible to do it. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough thing these days to find material.
A&M right now has no rosewood of any form. No veneer, no nothing.
Yeah, well, I think that's going to be I think that the supply in Canada is dwindling and nobody's bringing it in because you need CITES to import it. So I don't really know where that's going to go, but here we are.
Good luck to you.
Yeah, and to you.
Sorry.
So Jordan, I've got a quick question for you. What are the additives that you've tried out in shellac to harden the shellac?
I've tried a bunch of different stuff at this point. Benzoene was one that I had some success with, but the main two that you see in pretty much all the old recipes are sandrak and cobalt, which are two tree resins, as far as I know, that you can add to varying amounts to they will really increase the glossiness and the sort of elasticity and toughness. But once you hit a certain point, you've added too much and it becomes really difficult to get the finish on without it becoming too sticky. But those are two that it was recommended to me to look at those, and in sort of exploring all the old recipes that I could find online or in old books, those two seem to be mentioned as the main two. But Sandarak would be a good one to start with if you want to just try one to add a little bit in and see what it does to the finish. That's a good one to start with.
Violin makers have been using that in their varnish for hundreds of years.
Yeah. I mean, French polish I wouldn't even guess how old that technique is, but you can go down the rabbit hole of crazy additives. I've got some dragon's blood that I was messing around with just because it's called dragon's blood. There's you can really go deep into that whole world.
Well, thanks.
There's a good question in the chat that says, can you tell and show us where you French polish your guitars?
Like where I physically do?
Yeah, and maybe like how do you hold the guitar, for French polishing? Are you able to get a
after a day's work
around the entire body?
Yeah, I don't do anything fancy. I put a towel down on the end of my bench. Often I'll use a 15-foot radius dish with a towel over it, just to minimize the contact points, or it seems to balance things out if you've got the guitar resting on the top or the back. But this, I do it right here. The process that I've been using lately, I do the guitar in sections. So once the pour fill is all done, then I've got a spit coat on, or a wash coat, or a slop coat, depending on what you want to call it. I'll start usually on the top because it seems to take the longest. The top wants to soak up some of the shellac, and you kind of need to keep sanding it back because you're raising grain while you're working. And anyway, I start on the top, and the first session I'll do the top and the treble side, and then I'll hang it up. And I hang it up right there. You can see I've got a rack up here, and I just hang them at the end of the day, let them sit there. I've got this cabinet back here as well that I've adapted that has hooks that fit in at the top, so I can hang. When guitars get closer to being done, I'll hang them back there just because they're protected in case something crazy happens. But yeah, I'll do the top and the treble side, and then I'll hang it. And the second day I'll do the back, the bass side, and the neck, and then I'll hang it, and sort of alternate like that. So I do one session, and then I let it sit for a day, and then before I get back to that section again.
And
so that also helps.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say that also helps to keep, an hour of French polishing it's pretty labor intensive. You're working pretty hard, and 2 hours can feel like a little bit much. So doing a whole guitar at once, I do find to be a little bit, it starts to not be so much fun. So I found breaking it down into smaller sections means I'm at it for a shorter amount of time. And also I found leaving stuff to sit for a day between sessions helps to let the oil come out and to let the finish harden up a little bit before the next layer gets put on top of it.
Okay. And you're doing the neck and body are separate?
Usually for acoustic guitars, they usually are. If it's classical guitar, the neck's already attached. I build with like a Spanish heel Solera style for classical guitars. And electric guitars, the body and the neck will be already attached. So it's possible to do it both ways.
Okay. All right. I don't know if you want to answer this, but I'll ask it. So, and you can say no, or you can be vague or cagey. Do you mind if I ask you what your current mix for French polish is? Trade secret ?
That's an interesting question. I did think about this beforehand. I was taught to French polish by somebody. I'd done it for 20 some years, but I guess about 5 or 6 years ago, a friend of Michael and I's kind of gave us a rundown of how he does it. And I don't know how. What do you think about this, Michael? I'll be vague.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah, and I'm only saying this because I don't want to. This is hard-earned information that he got, and I don't want to be. I don't know, because I don't know how. I think he would be fine with it, but I don't know. You should talk to him, Michael. But my basic mix is I do body sessions to build the finish up. Basically, French polishing is all about getting flat as fast as possible. You can spend lots of times people will talk about, I spent a month on a French polish, and you can definitely do that. But my sort of goal was to learn how to do it, to get it built up and flat as quick as possible. So there's basically 2 parts of the process. There's the bodying session, which is just the 2-pound cut of shellac. And that's 30 grams of shellac to half a cup of alcohol, if I remember correctly off the top of my head. And I've got a friend in Alberta. If you guys are in the States, you're great because you've got access to Everclear, which is hands down the best thing to be using if you can get it. It's more expensive than like denatured, but A, there's no poison in it, and B, it seems to work a lot better than anything else I've tried. Except for, I found this Polish stuff once called Rectificani or something like that. It was like slightly higher alcohol even than Everclear, and it was nice, but it was more expensive. I used it in a pinch. But if you're in Canada, Murray, you can get this stuff in Alberta, but I think maybe Ontario, but in Manitoba they don't sell it. So if you've got a friend who's coming in from Alberta, they can bring you a case of it. So 30 grams shellac to half a cup of alcohol. And then when I go into the top coating process, which is once everything's flat and even, then all I want to do is build up gloss. I'm not trying to build up thickness. I'm just trying to get a flat, shiny surface. So I'll cut the amount of alcohol, or I'll double the amount of alcohol, cut the amount of shellac. So I've got a really thin solution of shellac and alcohol. And that's when I start adding in other things like Sandrak and Copal to put those last layers on, just to bring up the gloss really, and get a nice sort of hopefully tougher and glossier layer on top. So that's basically it, just shellac. And I don't always do the Copal. I find Copal that's where things seem to get pretty sticky. But that's basically it.
I got a question for you, Jordan.
Yeah.
I've been really fortunate. I think I've played maybe like 7 of your guitars at this point, and they sound incredible. And there's consistency to the sound, a certain timbre that I would say, whether it's a 15 or 16-inch model fan fret or not, you can hear a voice guitar to guitar for sure. And it's kind of interesting. I feel like today's world of building, you have people who tap at certain points and listen for certain things. Some people are all about flexing. Some people are really into quantitative material testing and things like that. So kind of probably similar to the French polish question of as comfortable as you are answering. I'd be curious what things throughout a build and your voicing process of what you look for and what you kind of use as reference points, or maybe lack thereof, to kind of be like, yeah, I'm on track with the sound you're looking for, I guess.
Yeah. I won't hold, there are no secrets here. I won't hold anything back, but I don't have a good answer to your question because I don't take many measurements really. I would think I do weigh things along the way, but mostly in the realm of bracing. I'll cut all my, I'll process up a bunch of brace wood and I get it all to a rough dimension that's the same. And then I'll weigh everything and I might try to like measure the stiffness of stuff a little bit by hanging a clamp on the end of it and using a caliper to see how much it moves. But that's really just to weed out stuff that's on the extreme end of either side. So if something seems really heavy or really light, or really stiff or really loose, I'll get rid of that stuff. And I'll use stuff that's fairly consistent in the middle. One thing that I try to do is I'll try to get all my bracewood for one guitar from the smallest section of the bracewood blank as possible, to the point where like my X brace will be cut from, you've got your quarter sawn vertical grain. My X brace will be cut from one section where it's the same grain lines from one side to the next. I think that's just being ridiculous, but I don't know, it brings me happiness in some way. And I find that allows me to make sure that things are going to be consistent within one guitar. So even if everything's a little bit on the stiffer side in one guitar or a little bit on the looser side in one guitar, at least everything's even. I don't end up with one brace that's like 10 times stiffer than the other brace. So that's something that I try to stay on top of a little bit, but that's sort of at the front end. And then once I'm into the voicing process, it's really just a combination of all the things you mentioned. I will say that I've found personally that the thicknessing of the top can be much more important for the way I build than anything I can do with the bracing afterwards. There seems to be quite a bit of room to move the layout and carve braces in different ways that doesn't seem to affect things as much as how I've initially shaped and thicknessed the top. And for me, that's a thicker top in the middle, thinned out towards the edges. And I spend a lot of time dialing that in to make sure that that it's as even. There's an even flex gradient from the center out to the edges. I spend more time on that than I do on carving the braces, to be honest. And I try to get that top really, really exactly where I want it before I've even glued braces on. And then the trick becomes keeping it protected throughout the rest of the build process. So I'm not all of a sudden finding I need to sand a huge divot out of something, or I'm trying to not change that top as much as possible. I don't tend to. I know a lot of people, or I've heard people will get the body together, or often glue the top to the sides and then kind of do the voicing process that way and thin the top once it's on the rims. That's not how I learned to do it. I learned from two different classical guitar makers, and that process just seems to work for me. And the main focus, as I say, is on that top thicknessing before braces even go on.
Awesome. Cool. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So Jordan, when you're thinning out the top before it's braced, and say it's thicker in the center and maybe thinner on the edges, presuming no longer have a flat top, essentially, or I should say even thickness. So when you glue your braces on, does that present any issues in terms of not gluing to what was a continuous flat surface?
Yeah, well, to a certain extent, it will, because one thing that I started to notice that freaked me out for a while until I figured out what was going on was that I'd put my top in the radius dish, I'd have my braces all radiused perfectly, I'd glue them in, and then I'd pull it out of the dish, and the radius would be like way more than, or noticeably more than what my template was showing it should have been. And so then I realized, oh, it's because the plates are thinner at the edge, so it's gonna. You're gluing it into the flat surface, but then it's pulling down into the radius. So yeah, things aren't going to be, you won't, I can't expect, if I'm doing a 25-foot radius or 35 or whatever, I can't expect it to come out of there exactly right. So I might need to adjust like my bridge radius before I glue it on. But besides that, no, I don't find there's any problem. The braces will be flexible enough that they'll push down into whatever whatever surface the top has left after conforming to the radius dish. So I don't do anything special in terms of adjusting for that in the process.
Okay. Thanks for that. There's a question in the chat. What was the name of the Osaka tool store again? And is that start ruler 18 inches long?
Yes, the star ruler is 18 inches. And the Osaka store, let me see if I had their card. It's called Nobori, Nobori, Hamonoten, which is Hamonoten. And I realized I started to say earlier, but didn't quite finish, as I am wont to do. They were doing mail order stuff to North America, and they no longer are, I believe. I think after COVID, Japan like shut down their postal system in a really crazy way, and I don't think those guys are shipping to North America anymore. But they are it's a great website to go look at and drool over the tools, because they have a focus on sort of the artisan style of tool making in Japan, but also the sort of high end like legend guys that are making tools over there. So lots of really cool stuff to look at. I don't know that I don't know that they have an English version of their website anymore either. So it can be a little tricky to navigate, but you could probably use the auto translate, or I believe they've got little pictures of like a chisel and you can click on that. So you'll be able to get around a little bit. But I'm trying to think, Michael, you might know better than I do at this point, what are the mail order places for Japanese tools at this point?
The only one I know of is that place in Tokyo. I'm not going to pronounce it right, but it's the Kirishigi Yamasuke.
Oh, yeah,
yeah, they're still shipping to North America. And I went to the store last time I was in Japan, and bought a set of chisels, and see if I have a card here. And there were a few people around who spoke English, and I think they do that kind of on purpose. And I did also try and buy something online, and unfortunately they were out of stock, but they did email me back, and so the communication was really, really pretty good. I don't, unfortunately, I can't find the card right now. So, but if anybody's interested, they can just send me a DM, and hopefully I'll find it between now and then. Yes, thank you. Still not gonna be able to pronounce it, but it's Kurashige would be my closest guess, which is probably wrong.
Pretty good.
Yeah. All right. Well, one last question, and then we got to let Jordan go. So, anybody? Thank you. Somebody just posted the link, the website link in the chat. So,
Yeah,
I'd like to.
what's in the
sorry.
gravy? What's in the gravy, man?
What's in the gravy?
Yeah.
The KFC.
You don't
gravy.
want to know.
I love that stuff. It's
Oh man. Yeah, no, I will not tell you what's in the gravy. Then, if you want to continue to enjoy it, you don't want to know how it's made.
I think maybe I'm done with it after that.
Thomas, just sorry. Is Jordan? Is it one at a? Do you do one at a time or batches of guitars when you're building? Just
it depends. It depends how far behind I am on the list. But typically, I try. The ideal seems to be 2 guitars for me. It would be wonderful to be able to do one at a time and just focus on that. But if I'm lucky, I build 5 guitars a year, and I've tried building 5 at once. I think I did 7 one time, and I nearly lost my mind. But 2 seems to be reasonable. The last batch I did was 3, and it wasn't so bad. But 2 seems to be the perfect number, where the workflow is good, and I don't feel overwhelmed by too many details I'm trying to keep in my mind at once. So, yeah, that's where I'm at.
Okay, thanks. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Do you do any repair work?
I try not to. I will do repair work on my own guitars, but I'm lucky. Winnipeg, there's myself. There's a classical guitar maker who's world class. I've been trying to get a guitar from him for years, and I don't know if he's going to do it for me before he retires, but my fingers are crossed. His name is Daryl Perry. His classical guitars are just stunning. They're so good. And there's Al Beardsell, who you guys probably know. And if you don't, you should go check him out. Al is like just this creative force in the world of guitar making. He does acoustic guitars with a lot of Selmer McAfee inspired detail, but Al just he's never built the same guitar twice, and he's come up with like a lot of things that I don't think people realize it was Al that started doing that. He's got just like amazing wild ideas, builds a lot of electric guitars, a lot of acoustic guitars, but he also runs an incredible repair shop. So most people that come to me for repairs, I just say, I could do it for you, but it's going to take twice as long and it'll cost you twice as much. So go talk to Al, and it'll be done twice as good. He'll do a better job than I would anyway. So I really respect you guys that are doing that repair work. I was lucky to not, I think because I was on the road, I had such a small amount of time to apply to it anyway. So focusing on building when I was home, I didn't need to have a supplemental income to kind of feed that building side of things. So I recognize I'm pretty lucky, and probably have a missing a section of education that would be valuable to have, but we are the creatures we are, and here I am. So, and I was also going to say how cool it is to see you guys all. I just am back in gallery view here somehow. I've been staring at my own face for an hour and a half, but it's really cool to see you guys all working away while I'm yakking away. So whoever put this thing together, I think it might, I don't know who it was actually, but thank you. This is a really cool resource.
Yeah. Well, that would go, most credit goes to Ian Dowd.
Okay. That's what I thought, but didn't want to assume. Thank you, Ian. This is a really cool thing.
All right. Well, thank you, Jordan. I really appreciate the insights into your guitars and the Kentucky fried chicken gravy, especially. I'm glad that that's never really been on my list to eat there. So I feel better about that decision now.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again. And Jordan, hopefully we'll see you around the Looth group some more. And
yeah, I haven't had a chance to dive in a big way yet, but I was scrolling through some of the videos last night, and it seems like, God damn, there's a lot of cool stuff on here.
There's a lot. Cool stuff.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and seeing people just working away, I'll definitely be popping on to just sort of be hanging out while the shop is happening. So thanks for asking me to do this, Michael.
Yeah, you got it. You got it. All right. Can everybody unmute and just say goodbye and thanks to Jordan. And
Thanks,
call it a
Jordan.
day.
Thanks so much, Jordan. That was excellent.
Thanks, Jordan.
Excellent.
Great.
Thank you.
Jordan.